through some of this kind of fast.
Okay.
But for those of you that don't know, my name is Brandon Hill. I'm representative of the Global Technical Access Center, which is the support organization for Siemens PLM. A little bit about us real quick here. Contact information, you can reach us through the website at support.ugs.com. Here you can access technical articles. We have a database of common problems, error messages, and the like. And you can actually open up cases with our support organization through the website. And then you can also reach us by phone at 1-800-955-0000. And you can see there at the bottom of this slide, there's actually our contact information through the phone tree. So moving on. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about new functionality and a little bit about the new implementation of some older functionality. So we'll start out with the nonlinear springs for 601. They are something that's been around for a little while, but they're now viable with 601. Basically, you'll define a CLS, a 1 or a 3 in your bulk data. That references a PLast card, which then references a table, which you can then add force versus displacement. Actually, I've got it listed here as force versus displacement. That's, I think, a misnomer. I think it's actually displacement versus force. Regardless, it defines a table that your solution then refers to so that you can get a nonlinear spring displacement. Take a look a little bit here at the structure, and I'll move through these kind of fast here so we've got some time for questions at the end of the conference. The CLS one, basic bulk data entry format, the card name, identification number, property identification number in this case, that will reference not a PLS but a PLS, and then the grid numbers and component numbers, grid 1, component 1, grid 2, component 2. The PLS, this is the card that allows you to define which table is going to be used for the nonlinearity for that spring. Again, same simple format. You'll notice here we've got 3 different tables that it can reference. In this case, we are going to be interested in the TK-NID. This is the force versus displacement, and for 601, the other 2 tables are simply ignored. So here's the format for the table, table identification number, and then just simply a series of XY data points followed by an entity to tell us at the end of the table. So here's a real simple example of the table, and you can see here in this case it is actually displacement versus force. The documentation says force versus displacement, but you'll give it a displacement value and a force value in the table. And a quick example of it in action. Okay, so in this deck you can see we have got our CLS defined. That references PLS 401, which calls out table ID 1403, which has our simple force versus displacement data. Okay, so we're going to move on to the new BG add card, and this was something that got discussed a little bit earlier, but I'm going to go into depth a little bit more on how it's implemented. This is kind of a neat functionality. This will allow, as was mentioned previously, multiple glue sets with their own individual properties. That allows you to have differing properties across a number of different sets. This also potentially gives you the ability to, rather than defining large glue sets, to maybe put together several small ones for testing configurations. The BG add is defined with a unique glue set ID, just as would be a BG set, and this is referenced in your case control. The case control BG set calls out your BG add. That BG add then in turn references the glue set IDs of what would be, under a normal situation, just standard glue set cards. Real simple format, and we'll talk about that in a moment. It just simply adds them together. Each of these BG sets then have their own BG parm cards where they can define local values for a number of the properties. The glue type, the penalty factors, and what type of penalty factor. And then, in addition, you can have a BG Parm card that references the BG adds glue set ID. So that allows you to have global parameters. So if you've got parameters that are going to be universal to all your sets, you can define those. And then if you've got, say, one BG set that has an odd parameter out, you define that in a local BG Parm. That overrides your global BG Parm, and everything's got the appropriate properties. And as is standard for pretty much everything, if nothing is defined, it defaults back to just the default BG Parm values. So a little bit about the format. As I said, it's very simple format. BG add, give it a glue set ID, and then simply the identification numbers of the BG sets you want to put together. The BG Parm card, here's the format for those of you unfamiliar with it. And these are the parameters that you can specifically vary in local sets. And again, there are more parameters that can be defined, but these are only the ones that are valid for local BG Parms, excuse me. The glue type, the penalty factors, how conductances are calculated, and what type of glue. So I'm looking at a quick case control just to see how it all goes together. At the case control, you see we have our standard BG set, and that's calling out, in this case, 108, which if you look down in the deck is actually a BG add card. Below that, you'll see we've got a BG Parm card 108 that defines some global parameters. And then that BG add card is calling out sets 1 and 2. So we look above, we've got BG Parm 1 and 2. Each of those has got their appropriate settings, and then we've got the BG sets that it is calling out, which have the actual glue definition. So fairly simple, pretty straightforward, but gives you a lot of power and a lot of ability to bring multiples together without having to create multiple large sets. A couple notes here. The BG add isn't currently supported by 601, so I'll have to do it the old way there, I'm afraid. You cannot chain BG adds together. So if you've got a whole bunch of small BG sets and you've got a BG add that adds together set 1, 2, and 3, and you've got another BG add that brings together 4, 5, and 6, you can't then have a BG add that brings together those two previous BG adds. You have to just make a new one that adds everything else together. Again, the format's pretty simple, so it should be quick to put a new one together. Again, as I mentioned previously, parameters defined in a local BG Parm override the global value. So you can set globals if the greater majority of your sets use the same values, and then set up a single local parameter for the 1 or 2 odd sets out that need a different parameter. And then, again, defaults are still used if not specifically defined. So, kind of raced through that, unfortunately, but thank you for your time. I suppose we can open it to questions now.
Yeah, Tom, if you can open up for questions, that'd be great.
Thank you very much.